Okay, we're going to go ahead and get going. Hi, everybody. My name is Tim Arnett with Thales, and we're going to be talking about the Explainable Fuzzy Challenge for 2024, or XFC. This is the fourth iteration of the competition, and we've made a few changes this year, but we'll go over the overall competition and the challenge itself. What you'll have to do, what we've done in the past, some of the motivations for the competition and things like that. So some general info. There is a website for the XFC competition. It is a GitHub site at this address. If you go there, which I'll just pull it up right now, there are a number of useful links on here with information, not just about the competition, but we'll have updates for things like seminars and changes to the schedule and things like that. There's also a link on this button right here at the on the home page for registration. And if you go to the registration form, we are allowing up to 6 team members this year. But what we'll need is essentially whoever's going to be the team lead to fill this out. And it has all the information that we'll need, including your team name, the emails, all that. The website has a few other things on it that are useful to know, including the schedule. For updates, we typically put updates not just on the website, but we send them out in both the Slack and by email. The Slack is our primary form of communication with the teams. Anybody in the competition can join it. The site for the Slack to be able to join is ucfuzzycompetition.slack.com. It will, I think it prompts you to get, I'm not sure, but if you go to this site, it'll prompt us and we should be able to add you. If you have any issues, though, please reach out to us. The competition, like I said, there are 6 students max per team. Any university level student is welcome, though. So any major, we're not limiting this to engineering or even just STEM. We've had a number of different majors in the past, and we tend to see that diverse teams tend to do better. All the coding and the environment and the deliverables will be in the Python coding language. There has been some talk of moving the environment to a different language, but even if so, it will have a Python API. So Python is the language that we'll be expecting teams to be able to operate in. The organizers of the competition, we have 4 main organizers, myself and Zach Phillips here at Thales. I'm the main organizer of the competition. Zach is one of the primary people working on Kessler, which we'll see in a little bit. This is the game/environment that we use for the competition. We also have Lynn Pickering at UC. She's a PhD student. She's been helping with XFC since its inception in 2021. And Sam King, who was formerly at UC and is now at Intramotive. He's a senior automation engineer, and he helps with various things, including being the main point of contact for a lot of the competition things, as well as maintaining the website. I also want to give special thanks to Dr. Kelly Cohen and Dr. Nick Ernest for their help throughout the years. Dr. Nick Ernest is also here at Thales. He's been the main person for handling the sponsorship of XFC by Thales, including donation of prize amounts, which we'll talk about a bit later. And Kelly Cohen, you know, many here are familiar with him, but Kelly Cohen at the University of Cincinnati has been instrumental in developing a lot of things like XFC, and has been a good cheerleader and person to know to help the competition out. Okay, so let's get into what XFC actually is. So the Explainable Fuzzy Challenge is a competition using fuzzy logic and machine learning methods to play video games. Like I said, this is the 4th annual competition. The first was in the spring of 2021. And students create an AI system to control agents in the Python arcade game Kessler. There's a focus on the agent explaining its actions as well. Seminars are given to the student teams throughout the fall semester, including ones on fuzzy logic. We have one on gradient-free optimization with a focus on reinforcement learning. We also typically have talks on gradient-based optimization of fuzzy systems. And then we also plan to have another seminar on explainability of fuzzy systems. We do have some additional seminars that aren't listed here, but typically those are more akin to a help session or going into more detail on how to do certain things in Kessler and things like that. So this isn't all the seminars that we'll have this year or all the talks, but these are the main ones that are materials that the teams may need to know in order to get started. The challenge culminates in a competition where each agent is evaluated live in Kessler. We do this in a live stream competition. The solutions are evaluated directly against each other in a number of different scenarios. And their explainability is judged by evaluation over different scenarios designed to elicit whatever behaviors we are interested in. And we do this by having a panel of human judges that assign scores for each agent. There are monetary prizes for the winning teams. There are awards for performance, most innovative, etc. The total prize pool, this is for last year, was $3,000. We're not exactly sure of amounts this year, but we expect it to be something similar, but we'll get into those details when we get them from our sponsors. And so the monetary prizes, they were distributed for the podium of the 3 best performing teams, but then also these additional awards that I mentioned. The goals of XFC in general. In the short term, we want to foster student development by increasing their skill set relating to all sorts of things like Python, object-oriented programming, repository management is a big thing. And then, of course, a lot of things to do with machine learning, reinforcement learning, fuzzy systems, fuzzy-based AI development, and more generally, project management and teamwork. Personally, the projects that I was involved in as an undergrad and even grad student, it really increased my hard skill set quite a bit. And of course, we want to foster soft skill development as well. In the longer term, the goal is to disseminate a lot of these skills into the workforce and improve XAI adoption and understanding. So some history of XFC. The first one, like I mentioned, was in 2021. This was a shortened one, so they only had the spring semester to work on it, and this was sort of a beta test where we were working out the best format for the competition along with the competitors and their advisors. This was based on the Fuzzy Asteroids Python game, which we're no longer using, but we're using a game inspired by that. We had 3 student teams that competed, and they came up with some solutions that were pretty good in a very short time frame. For the next year, XFC 2022, we extended it to be multi-vehicle, and they had to submit agents that could control single or multiple ships at the same time. We had about a dozen teams sign up that year, but only 2 submitted final agents for the competition. And that was a competition over the entire year. And so we had the 2-semester breakdown like we'll have for this year, where we have mainly seminars and development in fall, and then primary AI agent development and evaluation in the spring. For last year, the big change was we rewrote Fuzzy Asteroids into a separate open source game called Kessler. We changed it to be adversarial, and by adversarial, what I mean is that 2 AI agents from different teams will be in the simulation at the same time, and they're directly competing with each other to get the highest score possible. Because this was adversarial, and so we could evaluate teams head-to-head, we did change the competition portion to be in a playoff format. And the way we did this was we set seeding based on their performance against a baseline AI, and then we had them compete directly against each other to get results. It was quite a bit of fun. We might make some other changes to this format for this year, but we'll likely be doing something very similar. You can take a look at our YouTube channel as well. We have recordings from all of our previous XFC competitions, including the seminars as well. So it's not just the live stream. I'll just go to it right now so you can see some of the things that are on it. But we have a lot of the seminars from previous years, along with some fun things like highlight videos. You can actually go see the entire live stream from previous competitions. I will warn you, one reason why we don't have highlights from this past year is the live stream recording was fairly low quality. But actually, let's go ahead and look at the highlight video from the 2022 XFC competition. I realize you might not be getting audio, but I recommend taking a look at this highlight video anyway. And so you can see that this is from the competition. And so this is one of the student AI agents playing the game. And you can see that there's a number of different scenarios with different size, shape, layout of the asteroid and ship configurations. The teams will not know ahead of time what the scenarios will look like, but we encourage them to train and modify their agent based on a number of different scenarios, but we'll talk about that more when we talk about Kessler and the competition later on. Yeah. So as you can see, it quickly becomes quite a complicated game. So it's not a trivial game for students to try to create an agent to play. But it's also quite a bit of fun. I recommend checking out some of the previous videos. For this year, the challenge is mostly the same. You're creating an AI agent to play the game Kessler. You can go look at the repo. The Kessler is open source. Just pull that up right now, actually. So you can take a look at the repo here. Typically, you may not be using the code directly from the repo because we do have Kessler on PyPy as well. So we go to PyPy and search for Kessler game. It is right here. You can pip install it. There are some other useful things on the repo, though, like some examples. We'll probably be adding a few more examples in here as well. So I recommend checking those out after installing Kessler. So to do this, you will need to make your own repository, GitHub, GitLab, etc. We'll give you more details on this, and if teams have any questions, please ask us. But that is a requirement. Your AI agent that you develop needs to be explainable and must utilize fuzzy logic. Other algorithms are allowed, especially for things like pre-processing of data and things like that. It's mostly situation dependent. If you're unsure, just ask us. Typically, we're pretty flexible. Explainability will factor into the final scoring criteria. Like I mentioned, it's judged by a panel of human judges using XAI criteria. Last year, we had a number of different judges that are both in industry and in academia. And this has been working pretty well, so it'll likely be something similar to this again this year, where we'll have a number of explainability scenarios, and the judges then go through a portion where they're scoring the agents based on the explanations they're outputting. Again, don't worry about the format too much at the moment. We're going to be solidifying this in the next couple weeks, and we'll be giving an update on the details of what the competition will actually be in November. I'm actually going to skip over these and go straight to the timeline real quick. So the general timeline, today we have our kickoff. On Friday, we're actually going to go ahead and do our fuzzy inference system seminar. So we'll go over not just fuzzy logic, but then also fuzzy inference systems in general and how you might use those to create an AI agent to play Kessler. On the 16th, so that's the Monday after next, we will be doing a seminar on genetic algorithms and more generally just gradient-free optimization. And that is tentatively going to be given by Dr. Nick Ernest of Thales. After that, we're going to be doing an introduction to Kessler to go into more detail about the game itself and how you might interact with it and train your agent using it. In October and November, we're not sure of exact dates yet, but we'll make sure to update everybody when we have them. We'll have another seminar on explainability and AI, specifically fuzzy systems, given by Dr. Scott Dick from the University of Alberta. And then we'll also have at least one seminar, potentially two, on both gradient descent and reinforcement learning in fuzzy systems. And this is going to be given by Dr. Barnabas Bede at DigiPen Institute. Later on in November, on the 13th, we'll be doing an introduction for the competition. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go over the format of the competition itself. So the playoff, we'll talk about the scoring that teams can expect. We'll talk about things like how you're going to deliver your code and agents to us and when you need to do that by. And we'll also talk about things like details of the live stream. We may or may not have all the live stream details. I'm certain we won't have, like the event invite or anything at that point, most likely. But we will talk about things like the platform that we're going to be using. So in the past, we've done a combination of things like YouTube and Teams. It may be some combination of those, but again, we'll get into that later on. For spring semester, we typically do a spring kickoff pretty early in the semester, along with a help session. This is usually just on an as-needed basis, the help session. But we like to earmark at least one date for that, just to make sure teams are on pace. On March 1st, we have our milestone submission deadline. I'll talk a bit about those milestones in a second, but these are things that the teams need to do basically to keep themselves on pace. And although they are mandatory again this year, we've gone back and forth between having them be optional and mandatory. We did push back the deadline. So previously, when they were mandatory, we would have relatively short submission deadlines. And we found that put a lot of pressure on teams, during the time of the year when they're already having to deal with coursework and things like that. So we're extending the milestone submission deadline to be pretty close to the competition. And so what these really are is this is making sure teams are on pace. And it is going to be up to the teams somewhat as well to self-regulate their pacing. But this is just the final deadline for getting those into us. We then have qualifying on March 8th. And by qualifying, what I mean is teams will have to submit a version. It doesn't have to be the final version of their agent, but they have to submit a version of their agent by then that all it has to do is integrate and runs in the game, runs in our competition code. And that's it. It doesn't have to perform well. And all it has to do is be able to, run through a scenario, not crash, do some basic behaviors. That's fine. The performance outside of the functionality will not be a factor. It's just a pass fail. If your agent does that, and we will work with teams if there are issues during integration. But this is just to ensure that we can run your code and everything like that. Your final AI agents are going to be due on March 25th. And this is literally just you giving us the final repo link so we can go get a copy of it. It will be fixed after this point, aside from little things like integration or bug fixes. There will be no changes to the AI agents after this. And then on that Friday, March 29th, this is still tentative, but we are going to do our best to lock this in as soon as possible. This is our current competition date. Typically, we hold this in early afternoon Eastern time on Friday. And the typical format, again, we'll flesh this out a little bit later, but the typical format is that we have an intro talk, much like this one. Then we go into the teams describing what they did. We don't know if we'll have enough time. It depends on the number of teams to have live presentations. But at the very least, teams will make final presentations that can be viewed by everybody. Whether we do that live or not, we don't know. And then after that, we get into the explainability portion, and then we do the final playoff live stream. So it's quite a fun day, but there's a lot there, and we'll keep everybody updated as we have more details. So the milestones, you'll be given a full detailed PowerPoint on what's required for each of the milestones, and they will be given after their corresponding seminar talks. What I mean by corresponding is for the first one, you just have to do a thing in Kessler. You have to, install Kessler, get it up and running, and have an output action such that the ship does something. Again, we'll get more into detail. And so that one will be given after the Kessler intro. Then we have implement a FIS in Kessler. No machine learning is necessary. All you're going to do is implement a fuzzy system in Kessler that does something. It just has to take in information from the game and spit something out that goes back to the game. That's it. Milestone 3 will be FIS optimization and or learning in Kessler. And it just has to be something simple. You're going to have a FIS or multiple that are in the game, like milestone 2. But then you're going to use some sort of machine learning process in order to optimize or learn parameters and behaviors using those FISs. And so that'll be the last one. And of course, that's much more akin to what you'll be doing during your AI agent development. So all these are meant to keep the teams on pace a little bit at a time, just little bits and pieces. But we found in the past that these tend to help to do. So a little bit more on Kessler itself. It is itself written in Python. Again, it's open source with an Apache 2.0 license. I encourage all of you to go grab it, go play with it. You can even play it with a controller in Windows. It's a 3DOF simulation, and it does wrap at the edges like the classic game Asteroids. The vehicle can rotate, move forwards and backwards, and fire projectiles. Any asteroids that are hit with projectiles will break into smaller pieces until they get to the minimum size, and then they just disappear. Any piece contacting the vehicle destroys it. This is likely going to change this year, and I'll talk about those changes in a minute. And it is currently multi-agent / adversarial. We don't have plans to make it multi-agent per team. It will likely still be a one-on-one, but we'll have multiple teams in the game at the same time. It was inspired by the Fuzzy Asteroid / Asteroid Smasher game that was previously developed. It is written from scratch with minimal dependencies, such that it's more conducive to reinforcement learning than ML. There's also 2 different graphics options, Tkinter graphics and Unreal Engine. So this is an example of what the game looks like with the Tkinter graphics. And we'll talk about that more in the Kessler intro, but this is the default graphics option. And so what you're seeing here is one of the ships in the game and a number of asteroids. So these gray circles are the asteroids themselves. And you can see how some of them have already split into smaller asteroids. There you'll see information on the right side about the ships for each team, along with some general game information. The UE5 graphics are a bit flashier, of course. They're a bit of an ordeal to get installed and up and running. I shouldn't say an ordeal; it's not very difficult. But we'll tell teams how to do this if they would like to. But this is really just a nice to have. You don't need to do this. To install Kessler, like I said, it's on PyPy, so it's this easy. You can do this. But if you'd like to go grab the code from the repo as well, you can do that. One thing to note is that Kessler currently requires Python 3.10. So you will have to use that version when creating your environment. I'm going to skip over some of this right now. This is just some detail on how you actually create an agent and the functionality that you'll need and what is actually coming out of the game and what you need to send back. In general, though, there's this Kessler controller class, and the actions function inside of that controller class is where you define the information that you'll be sending back to the game. So you're going to take in information from the game, manipulate it in some way, and spit out some actions. The information that you get every time stepping Kessler includes the game state, which has all the information on the asteroids, ships, bullets, map size, time, a lot of things. And within each of these, there's a lot of information attached to each thing. Like the ships have a lot of information, including you have more information about yourself than you do about other ships. You'll get information about the asteroids, the bullets, some other things that we'll talk about in a second. In general, you score points in the game by remaining alive and hitting asteroids. This can be modified by you, by the way, with your machine learning or reinforcement learning process to encourage different behaviors. The score that is inside the game right now is simply based on the number of asteroids that are hit. For the competition, this might be slightly different. In the past, what we've done, though, is we have the score be decided by the total number of asteroids, but then we have tiebreakers based on other things like accuracy and then evaluation time of controllers. So it was just set up as a tiered tie-breaking system. We'll discuss that more when we talk about more of the competition details. Any state information that is available to you can be used. You're allowed to use any vehicle position, asteroid position, projectiles fired, whatever. Anything that comes back, you're allowed to use in whatever manner you see fit. Additional metrics and methods can be generated and used by teams. We've had teams do things like try to do asteroid density maps or saliency maps, threat prioritization. You can do full path planning if you desire. We leave it open-ended, so we're not prescribing the method that teams use for actually processing information and creating their agent. One of the biggest things this year are a few changes to Kessler itself. We're going to be adding HP or hit points to the ships, and the reason we're doing this is to essentially make it more granular, because previously any contact with an asteroid in the ship would take away 1 life, and you would have a set number of lives, typically 3. And so what that means is you can just hit an asteroid 3 times before you're done, before the scenario is over. And so this doesn't account for things like the different size or speed of the asteroids, because they are physics-based, the dynamics for the asteroids. They do have momentum and things like that. So we're looking at changing the ships to have just an HP meter. So you'll have a set amount of HP, and things will take away different amounts of HP. So it allows for more granular impacts and things like that. We're also going to be adding mines. Both of these things will be happening, by the way, so you can count. We're committing to adding those. The mines will be another offensive weapon addition. They will be essentially a bomb that gets placed by the ship and has a certain time countdown timer, and once it reaches 0, it detonates, and it will deal damage to any ship or asteroid that's within the blast radius. And that will be, we'll give the details when we get into Kessler for that as well. But that's going to add an interesting flavor to the game, because up until now, we only had bullets. Now, bullets can still not affect adversarial ships on other teams. So you can't directly shoot other ships. You can only shoot asteroids. However, mines will deal damage to any ship that is caught within the blast radius, regardless. You can even take damage to yourself, at least how it's currently set up. We may or may not change that after some play testing and evaluation in the coming weeks. You will have a fixed number of mines per scenario, usually probably a fairly low number, but again, we'll get into more detail. One of the fun things we're doing again this year is custom ship sprites as well. So we encourage you to make a custom ship sprite. There's a number that are included in Kessler. They're just these little ship sprites that are in this directory in Kessler game. So Kessler game, graphics, images, and then you'll find these. So one way to do this is you can choose one of these ships and just modify it in your favorite picture editing software. You can make a completely custom sprite, but if you do, make sure to keep your aspect ratio close to 1:1. You can change colors, add text and logos, whatever you want to do, but make sure you have the rights and permissions for any images, words, or phrases that you use. Please don't put, something that's copyrighted or trademarked onto your ship, unless you own that copyright or trademark. And then, of course, you'll have to send us your custom sprite. We'll do that at qualification in the spring. Some of the requirements, it must be, this is not a hard requirement at the moment. There's still more investigation here, but at the moment, we want teams to keep them to 20 kilobytes or fewer. Obviously can't contain any offensive, profane, or obscene material. Actually, this says you must not alter the dimensions or size of the ship sprite. This is actually not the case anymore. We can do scaling, so you can alter the shape and size, but what we want to warn you of is be careful with the aspect ratio, because what will happen is it essentially is putting the ships inside of it's inside of a circle, essentially. And because of that, you want an aspect ratio that's close to 1-to-1 in order to keep the scaling the best. Because in the past, we've seen long and skinny ship sprites, and what it does is it forces the size to be so small that it's pretty tough to make out any detail on the ship. So we recommend keeping it close to 1-to-1. We also plan to do a peer award this year for the prizes. In addition to things like the most innovative and most explainable award, we plan to do a peer award for the best custom ship sprite. So we encourage everybody to make one and make it fun, make it cool. For the competition, like I said, the final version of your AI needs to be sent to us on the due date. It's about a week before the competition. And we'll need access to your repo. We'll get into those details with all the team members. Depending on the number of teams, we may have those live presentations. Regardless of whether we do that or not, though, we will require final presentations to be created. We may just do videos that we can then send out to everybody. The AIs will be evaluated in a number of new scenarios and tested in all those. And also, don't forget to create an awesome name for both your project and your Kessler agent. We've had some teams have a lot of fun with that in the past, so we encourage that. For the awards, there will be awards for first through third place based on the scoring criteria. And so we'll have those podium awards, and the additional awards, like I mentioned, we'll have most explainable, most innovative, and those come from the judges panel. And then we'll also have the peer award that I just mentioned. We don't know the amounts yet, but we'll get those because we're in talks with our sponsors right now. And the numbers may be subject to change later on if we get additional sponsorships, but we'll update teams with those as soon as possible. In the past, our total prize pool has typically been around $3,000 US. So we expect it to be something like that, but we don't know. So we're not going to put numbers down yet. All right, and that's about it for the kickoff. This is the contact info for the three main organizers, myself, Lynn Pickering, and Sam King. I'll leave this up while we do Q&A and discussion. Again, the website is here, so go there for updates. For any competitors, we highly recommend joining the Slack because we put updates and other things in the Slack. It's also much easier to communicate across teams. And so we encourage the teams to communicate with each other if they have interesting things they want to show or they have questions. We do also put general help and tips in the Slack as well. So I recommend doing that. Also, you can go to the YouTube channel and you can catch up on some of our previous seminars and live streams. So with that, yeah, I'll open it up to the field for any questions you might have. Again, we'll be sending out a lot more detail in the next coming weeks as we solidify further dates for both seminars, the competition, and things like the prize amounts. But feel free to ask any questions that you might have at the moment, and also feel free to contact us at any time. Nick, did you have a question or something you'd like to bring up? I do see there was a question from Luca in the chat. Luca said, is Python the only allowed language for everything, or can I use other languages, tools for offline training generation, as long as the final model works in the Python game environment? Yes, you can use pretty much whatever you want. The interfaces will be in Python. So that will be up to you to do that interfacing. But no, that's fine as long as we can get it integrated and running. There's no issue there. Yeah, one reason why we use Python is simply due to ease of access for most students. But you're not limited to only that. I will just say that the interfaces will be in Python, so that will be the only difficulty there. Do we have any other questions? If not, you can always email us offline or contact us in the Slack. We're always happy to answer questions. Also, in case there are others that weren't able to make the live meeting, the recording will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. And so everybody will not only have all the information, but they'll have all the links as well for things like the website and the Slack.